We are live, so I'm so happy this morning. So, welcome to Sipping Tea with Sabrina. In just a second, we'll be sharing the tea on demystifying. No, this is not what we're sharing the tea on. We are sharing the tea on asking for the donations and what gets in the way. If you've never met me before, I'm Sabrina, the Dream Team Architect and President and CEO of Building Better Boards. I specialize in building elite leadership teams for corporate and nonprofit boards and CEOs, turning high level potential into extraordinary performance. This conversation that we're going to have today is going to be critical to those wanting to understand asking for the donation and what gets in the way. Whether you are a nonprofit, a mission driven company, or an association. And that's why we have Jeannie with us today. So I'm so excited to have you with us today. This is going to be a great conversation. And so, with that in mind, I know we have people slowly coming on, but what I want you to do is share a little bit about yourself and your experience with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Sabrina, for that warm welcome. And I am really excited to be here. So, number one, I am a money expert, but I understand money in the brain because we have money brain. But how we handle our transactions and our relationships are very much impacted by our thinking, our feelings, our emotions. But then we have patterns, meaning we just keep repeating the same thing. Feelings, thoughts, and patterns, and that's how we get here. But how I got started years ago is I trained as a mental health substance abuse counselor, and you know what? I worked in a lot of nonprofits, and so what I learned very quickly was that they had just barely any money to hire me. That's what they always told me. We had the worst equipment. We had no resource, and it was always on you. So it always felt like if you're trying to ask for money, you were asking for can you alleviate the burden? And I want to share that right now with a lot of these nonprofits out there, these spaces that they're trying to grow and ask for the donations, because I just want to give you a little money tip. And I know a lot of you already know this, but with the current administration, as it stands today, January 29th, 2025, it does not appear that it's going to be a giving administration. If we're halting all federal loans and grants, Medicaid, SNAP, and I won't even continue on, but this is going to be a problem. So when people think charities or nonprofits are going to somehow solve the gap, I have got news for them. They had better go reach into their pockets to support these charities and these nonprofits and these mission-driven boards, because it's going to take all of us to do that. So how I got started. Thank you.
100% agree. Sorry, I had to do a little amen there for you.
Yes, I know. And this is not an amen that I'm thrilled to death about. I'm like, why can't this be easier? But I want to just say this is that how I got started down this line is really my own interactions with my personal life, but also my professional life. And I've just seen that people are scared and nervous to ask strangers. They will hold back. They won't tell them maybe the full pricing. They'll say like the price maybe for sponsorship is $3,000, but we would take $1,000. That's not an ask.
So on point. So you kind of went into that first question I had, but let's start with the basics. Why do some people struggle with asking for donations or investments, even when they believe deeply in the cause or the project?
They don't know if they're the right person asking. So it's like it's a deserving piece. So it's like, do I deserve to go up to Sabrina and say, Sabrina, I love the work that you're doing. And I know you know the work that I'm doing here at this amazing nonprofit. We are always asking for support, and your support in terms of your time is wonderful, but we also need your money, or we would like a donation of, give the dollar amount. What are you asking for? $25? Great. If they say, well, I can't give 25, I can give you 5, you can always accept that. But like, if that's what you want, great. But if you know Sabrina and Sabrina is like available, then do you really need 100? And if you're like, well, we need everything, right? So that's like the panic that comes along with, I'm not sure if I'm the worthy person. And then the panic comes of like, we need $1 million. And, it's like, well, there are very wealthy patrons out there, but what has proven time and time again with political contributions as well as charitable contributions is that people are willing to give $5 and $10, $15, $20 over and over out of their weekly pay if they know that they need your weekly support.
Yep. You mentioned worthiness, but I've also seen that fear is a huge factor
Oh,
for
yes.
fundraising. So what's the most common fears or mental roadblocks people face when making the ask, and how can they overcome them?
So one of the biggest fears that I've seen is, like I gave the example of like asking for the dollar amount and then pulling back. So that's a big problem because that's your fear talking. And then when I just also said, when we're like, I'm not even sure if I'm the right person, to be asking this, but so the biggest fear that I would say is that you just kind of, I don't, like you tell yourself you don't know, or you don't know what to say. Like that's where it starts. Like, so you give away your power. That's really what fear sometimes is about when it comes to money, is you hand your power over there to somebody who's not even willing to receive it because they don't even know that you gave it away.
Yeah.
And people kind of, you'll see it even in their behavior. They'll shrink, like their shoulders will go up, their head will drop, their eyes go down, they start to stutter a little bit or stumble on their words, and it's because they're not comfortable. So one of the biggest fears that I encourage you to get over this is to practice in front of your mirror. If all you got is your little cell phone, that will work. Feel free to record. But you have to practice, like, Sabrina, thank you so much for taking this few minutes with me. I would love it if you could make a donation of $25. And people are like, oh, wow. Now, what people don't really want is a script.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not here to tell nonprofits don't have a script, because sometimes that's what people need, in order to get on the phone. But when it's very script driven, people are like, oh, you're just looking for numbers, meaning numbers of people. Versus if you can have that one-on-one conversation, it works better. One of the best things I saw in terms of asking for the money, this happened to me a few weeks, it was 2024, it was definitely a few months ago. And I walked in and I was about ready to get on the metro. This woman walked over, she's like, hi. And she was very friendly. She's like, can I just talk to you? And I said, what's going on? Like, cause I didn't know something was going on. I was about to get onto the metro in the Washington, DC area. I was like, what happened? Now what? And she's like, no, I'm with Doctors with Borders. And I said, oh, yeah, I know exactly who you guys are. She's like, you know who we are? I said, yeah, I've seen all your stuff. And then she's like, I would like it if you'd become a patron. And I was like, well, how much is it? She's like, can you sit down for a minute so I can explain it to you? And I was like, sure. So I became a patron because she said hello. She was friendly. She identified quickly. I understood that it was going to be an ask. Like, it wasn't like, where was this coming from? Now, I know she had a ton of training to do that, and she was almost effortless. Right. But that's the kind of stuff that you have to think about. Like, I have to be willing to talk to anybody, and if I see somebody who's like, no, I don't want to talk to you, that's okay. Right. But move on to the person who's willing to talk to you. Yeah. And I do think the fear of rejection holds a lot of people back.
Yeah, that's a big fear, the fear of rejection. I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine who was like the public relations spokesperson for the state trooper, and we serve on a committee together. And he's like, I could never ask for money. I don't know how you do that.
Wow.
And I'm looking at him like, your network is so big. You can leverage he's retired. And I'm like, all the relationships that you have, you can leverage that, and people would willingly say yes to you because they trust you. All you have to do is say, will you consider an investment? But in your experience, what mindset shifts are most important to embrace when it comes to fundraising?
Stick to what the mission is about, because people will buy your passion any day of the week, 24/7. They will not buy being a number. So when this woman was talking to me, yes, I knew she had, training, I could tell, but I was just like, well, why did you join Doctors Without Borders? Why? Or Doctors Without Borders. I was like, wait, is it with Borders? No, that's not right. Wrong charity, Jeannie, wrong charity. That's called the US. Not a bad thing. But, but that's exactly what it is. I paid attention to how enthusiastic she was. She was able to tell me her experience with the organization. And that's where a lot of times people don't realize that deserving piece, your story matters. So, if you can be part of that mission, it's like, I joined this company and I joined this nonprofit, this mission-based, charity because, I don't expect when it's kettle season that the people who are ringing the bell are going to give me a whole story. I mean, and that's how well the Salvation Army does their charity, or kettle season as they call it. But if I had a chance to talk to somebody who's in the Corps, you better believe I'm going to be asking all kinds of questions. If I have an opportunity to talk to somebody like a Salvation Army sponsored drug rehab center, I'm going to be asking them loads of questions. What led you here? And like, how are you working with this? Because not everybody can do the Salvation Army piece. Right. It's a challenge. It's a separate Christian organization, but it does do charity work.
Right.
And they're like, oh, you know that? And I'm like, well, yeah, you asked for my money, so I'm going to make sure I know where I'm giving it.
Right. And so again, you know, I want to make sure that people, because I think this is one of the things that you can really shine a little bit more light on, is that mindset shift. Mm-hmm. What do people need to embrace when it comes to fundraising? Outside of, you know, knowing a little bit, looking at the person's passion, and that you got to have passion for the mission, right? And I know that. But like I said, when I looked at my friend, I'm like, you have this huge network, and you're state trooper, and you can't ask someone, you can't do that. What is that?
That's shame.
Okay.
That's shame for somebody.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that, and I'll just tell you from a money perspective, some people believe the only way they are worth any value is they have to work really hard, really long, and they have to maintain that public persona, which is good for a state trooper. You want them to, you know, be as good as they are, hopefully on the job as they are with other people. God, you really do, because nobody wants bad cops.
Right.
And so once you own that position and you know how much you make, it's public knowledge. It's like not that big of a deal, like grade whatever, you make X amount of dollars roughly. So people know what you make. So it's all pretty open. Right. But if you start talking to people about that, you need money to help with something, they're like, I don't know if I can do that. That's a shame piece, because they have been told and taught, and they've repeated that pattern over and over, that they have to make money this way or receive money this way. They are not allowed to accept a charitable donation. And that's another reason that sometimes people go in nonprofits, is they don't even think they're really that good for corporate. So they go in there and they're like, oh, okay, I'm really good at talking to people. Oh, you want me to talk to donors? Okay. Sure. You know, and because and why do people do that? Well, there's many reasons for it, but that's really what it is. Here's the good news. You can rewire that silliness. And I call it silliness because when we can start to laugh and chuckle at our shameful thoughts and behaviors, you don't have to tell everybody about it. You don't have to have a whole narration and story and get on TikTok and like explain your life. No, first of all, nobody's really listening, but but you want to really talk about is like, hey, maybe this is a voice in my head that lies to me. Mm-hmm. Like that would be just step one, recognizing, oh, it's that voice in my head that tells me I can't do this, instead of I cannot do this. So if you can start to make that simple separation right there, that can be very powerful. Writing down your affirmations. So if you're like, I am going to talk to 10 people today, that's my job, whether it's on the computer, you know, whatever, in person, then you're going to start doing it, whether you are like always aware of it or not. Okay. I always like a good deep breath before I have to go do something that I'm like, okay. Geez. And have you heard of the power pose? This was, yeah. Okay. So yes, look at you, power posing right there. But I do it with my hands, because many times before I'm going to get on camera, I'm going to speak with you, Sabrina. I don't want to screw this up. Right. I want to give people good information. So what I do is I take my hands and I put them in a steeple. Thank God this is video, right? So nobody can see me. And then I expand it. Let me just put my earbud back in. And I expand it and I hold it with equal pressure. I'm not like trying to, and I'm not like gripping onto myself for dear life. That's silly. There's no reason to do that. But what I'm doing is I'm holding it, and I'm holding that space a little bit. And I'm going to raise my elbows a little bit here so you can see me. And I'm going to hold it like this because I'm in an expanded space. Am I a superhero? Not exactly, but I know I can hold this for at least 30 seconds, maybe to a minute. And I've done this in person in meetings, not like to this extent. But what I might do is I might have my finger pointed forward and I see your point, or okay, like I'll start to expand my space very gently, not because I'm trying to take it up, but I just want to be clear. I want to say things, or I want to do this, or share my hands more. Like and then people are like, wow, she's really powerful. No, I just know how to work with my space.
Right. Right.
And I know that if I can calm my nerves and breathe a little bit, get the tension out of the shakiness by giving it some focused attention. And sometimes I pulse it if I'm like really like, oh God. Okay, I'm going to do this now.
Okay.
And that is a practice behavior, and that is a rewire.
Okay. That is a good tip. So you've talked about a couple of things. You talked about, the emotion of this, not feeling worthy, shame, some of the fears, but you also went into the passion that the person who's making the ask has. So what role does storytelling play in asking for donations, and how can fundraisers craft a compelling story that inspires donors to give but not sound scripted, like you indicated?
Yes. Okay. So I'm so glad you said that. So passionate stories might have a flub.
Okay.
So you might say, oh, my name's Sabrina Hernandez Walker. No, your name is Sabrina Walker Hernandez, right? But you might, oh, I forgot. Sorry. I have and tripped over. I'm so sorry. I might even say I'm a little nervous, or, I've been running around. Let me talk to you. And I want to find out how you're doing. Maybe start there and then begin, if that helps. But what I've learned to do is once you know your pitch or your script and practice that in front of the mirror, you can then create in the moment. So for instance, if I was speaking to somebody that I wanted to talk to them about investing in a startup, and you're like, gee, that's not even, but they got to do a lot of fundraising. If you've ever seen startups, it's
crazy.
Yes. And so what they have to do is to be able to talk about the product, the mission themselves in a way. So, that's something I just offer as like a possible suggestion. If people are asking for millions, literally from a human being, one person to write that $1 million check, then you need to be able to, what is it that you're asking for? Meaning the clarity of the conversation. Who are you speaking to? And then, what is it that you do? And can you then breathe into this and flub a little bit, but give some passion to it? Because when people are irresponsible and just treat you like AI, like a little bot or a troll that we see that we can flick away on social media or block, then we lose that empathic connection. We lose that ability to read another person. We lose that ability to say like, hey, I'm here. And you don't even have to get political. Like you can say, I'm here because I believe in the mission of this. And I was once a person who received this service. Oh my God. Why did you receive the service? Please tell me. All of a sudden, I'm going to remember you because, I just met this person. It's personalized. And I might ask them a question that's not in the script, but hopefully they know the answer.
Right.
And then there you go.
Right.
One of the worst experiences I ever had, I was working for a nonprofit that I literally started when I was 16. I started working there at 16 or 15. And I was just a kid when I started there. And they asked me to come back. Do a little bit of like supervision and encourage people to, and I was just like a frontline person helping other teams to do like take a call, making sure that stuff is cool and all whatever. And I was approached by this board member who's this gentleman who stood over me and started screaming at me because he wanted numbers of the budget that I would never have.
Right.
And I said, well, I don't know those numbers. I was so honest. And I kept saying, I don't have those numbers because I don't work the front end. I only work this piece. And, and I was trying to explain it and he would not stop. And nobody came by to tell him he was wrong.
Oh, not living your values. Come on, nonprofit.
Yeah. So then I told him later, I said, I've really got raked over the coals by Mr. So-and-so. Has he had a suicidal child or something? Like I was like trying to figure out like, why was this emotional piece so powerful? And I think a lot of it is that he had a lot of misdirected energy in his life, that there were a lot of things that weren't going well and he wanted to make this work. So he wanted to be like, I'm on the board and I'm talking to the people. And I hear that. But if you don't have enough internal information about your folks, and you're not able to be cognitively flexible to find out why somebody doesn't know the numbers of the nonprofit because they don't touch them. Why would you think I would know that? Right. Then that can be an issue. So I also encourage you that sometimes you're going to have failed conversations, and these are good. These are gold mine, because when you realize that you got a little too scripted, you might have stepped away, or you didn't read something as they were checking their phone, or whatever is going on, that's not on you.
Right.
That is something you're just learning, because every interaction has a lot of adaptability, has a lot of unpredictability that you don't know.
Right.
One of my favorite quotes, this is a little off topic, but I think he really made a good point. And this is, remember those days when we had war games? Remember those days? Like they practiced war games?
Yeah.
And I mean online. They did computer online generated war games, not
They made a whole movie about it. We're Gen Xers, I guess.
Yes. But this is actually more modern. This was actually before, right after Iraq. So they had a lot of, anyway. So there was this general, I can't think of the general's name, but basically he said, you can't over prepare even in an exercise, let alone a simulation. You have to allow your enemy to show up. And I don't mean that in any type of charitable situation, but I mean, if you allow the person to show up, they may surprise you and tell you they've been a member for like 5 years, and that they're going to ask for your contact information because they can have their friend talk to you because they had some questions.
Right. And so and in essence, what I hear is just have your story, but be prepared, right? Be prepared to deal with someone who might not be having a great day, and don't take it personal. That's what I got from it. And the other thing that I got from it too is something that a coach of mine reminds me, it's okay to hear no, right? Every no is the step to a yes.
Yes.
You got to hear the no so you can get to the yes. And it goes back to that part where you were talking about rejection. And if people are just joining us, I want to welcome them to the broadcast, but you've missed some things. And we're currently talking about asking for donations and what gets in the way. And we've covered some of those emotional pieces that get in the way: rejection, shame, fear, all of those things. But not only that, not knowing your story and not having that passion and not being willing to, you're going to hear the no's. So just work that out. And what did you say? Jenny, you said change the narrative.
Change the narrative. Yeah.
Change the narrative. So you just got to learn that and be okay with that. If you're going to be in this business of nonprofit, you're going to hear those things. So you work with a lot of organizations. What's the most common mistake organizations make when asking for investment, and how can they fix it?
The most common thing that I see is that they're not consistent. So whether it's their email marketing campaign, it's not consistent in terms of the messaging, but it's also not consistent in terms of there's like a whole thing with email automation that I wish I knew all of it, but like there's sequencing, and sometimes the sequencing's really off.
Right.
And the messaging, even in the sequencing, is always like, well, now we're doomed because we can't, and I'm like, if you would say something like, we would love to have you come back for the following reasons, you would get a different donor instead of one like, oh my God, it's and I think
the world is coming to an end, and without you, we're just going to fail, and you're just going to attract the wrong people.
Yes. And I feel like that's just not always the best answer, because that may work for a high net worth donor. But when you explain it to people like, listen, we love you. We love, sending you the t-shirts or whatever, like making you like a $25 weekly sponsor, whatever it is,
right?
Person. And we want you to continue. And we know that times are tight, but, we still want you here. And if you got to go, we understand. Could you send us somebody? Could you forward the email? Like, I wish they would do some other strategies that people do in human interactions that they don't do in an email and online. Who are you willing to share this with? Who are you willing to talk to? Because let's face it, the passionate people really make this world into something amazing.
Yes, they really do. And so here's another one for you. So many fundraisers, they kind of avoid making directly ask for a large gift. And don't get me to defining what is a large gift, okay? But it's different for everybody. But whatever that is, what strategies do you recommend to make the big ask less intimidating for folks? Because you went into the emotional piece. And if they can't ask for $25, what about those large gifts and what comes up?
So for the large gifts, again, from a money brain perspective, I'm just going to talk about how money works in the brain. They want to know what are they going to get if they give for that. So like I'm thinking of $5,000 to, that's a large piece of money.
I agree.
And so I would be like, are you getting a certificate? Are you going, are they going to offer you something for that? And I don't mean like a coffee cup or,
Right.
but like, does your name end up, because this is part of legacy too. When you have that amount of money, does it end up in like a particular wall for our $5,000 donors? I said boner. So funny. Donor, but you have to have a sense of humor. Like if you can't laugh at yourself, then what are we doing here? But like that's an example of it. So that becomes more of a legacy thing. I would think if you're giving larger sums of money, you will want to have more information about the organization. So is there a dinner party that you get to meet some of these other donors, or a Zoom if necessary? Because I've known people who've done like really large sums of money, like 6 and 7 figures. And what a lot of it is just conversations on the phone. Hi, Jack. How are you? Hi, Mary. So good to hear from you. Yeah, we would love to have you come down. We'll give you a tour of the place. This is what we're interested in. Did you speak to your accountant, your attorney, or would you like them to contact us? We can give you an invoice, so that you'll have it for your taxes. Just make it really subtle, but clear, without making it like, if you don't give us $1 million, we're sunk.
Right. And you spoke volume because you talked about cultivation. You're not just going to go ask people for this big amount of money and you haven't talked to them on the phone and they don't know who you are. All of those things that you said are perfect. So here's the thing, when we're going back to that let's say you did the phone call, you invited them in for the tour, you did all of those steps. Sometimes donors, they're going to say no, or they're going to give less than what you asked or expected.
Sure.
How should professionals handle rejection of that without losing confidence or damaging the relationship?
So I would say, like, if people are going to give you, again, I'll use the $5,000 or $10,000. That was just a significant amount of money, and that was your ask, and they gave you $2,500. First of all, thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much for your generosity. We really appreciate it. Number one. Number two, if there is supposed to be 5,000 happening this week, don't damage the relationship. Go talk to somebody else, because I'm telling you, that's exactly what happens. Every failed money conversation that hit the skids because this person didn't come through and didn't pay you, guess what? The money's somewhere else. So that's why I always try to encourage people to be like, bring the people in, talk to them, encourage them, but make sure you've got 10 more people you got to talk to today. Because if that's the plan is, oh, this amazing person's going to come in and save us, we don't have to do any more work today, you have missed the whole point of what money can do, not just for your organization, but what money can do for you. And that is, it's a big lesson for a lot of people that when they're like, I just thought I would just go to one person, they would give me money. And it's like, no.
You're saying something, you're connecting this to what you said at the top about federal government and freezing. I'm going to say this for people. If you are relying more than 20% of your budget on one source, whether it's an individual or federal government, grants, all of those, then you're not doing yourself any favors, because your organization will cease to exist if you are doing that. And your board needs to know that. So listen to what is being said. You have to diversify, and you have to not put all your eggs in one basket over and over again. So I want to know, this is my final question. What my question, but I see a lot going on in the chat. Okay, so we can get there. So what are 3 practical tips leaders can start implementing today to boost their confidence and success in asking for donations?
So this is a little out there maybe, but I would say if you're running an organization, you need to practice the fundraising sort of mantra, and you need to show grace by accepting a rejection for your team and for your staff. So what does that look like? So that means that you will make sure that you have time to have those 10 conversations, whatever that looks like. It's email, text, phone call. That's fine. I'm not here to get into the communication wars. Do whatever you got to do. The other piece is that I would encourage them to start asking their staff to do things and be willing to hear the no.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it's sort of like, I'm the leader, go follow. And it's like, they're going to follow, but if they're doing 25 other things, they may not be able to follow immediately.
Right.
Unless the place is on fire, then they'll go do it, right?
Right.
So I would say, number one, they have to practice it. They have to literally show, this is how I handle rejection. And I'm going to show you how I handle the no so you can move forward. One of my favorite lines about Vice President Kamala Harris, and I was like sharing this with everybody, I eat no for breakfast. And I was like, see, this is what I need to hear. I need to be reminded that a no is not never again.
Right.
It's not no way. It's not you have to give up. It's just a no for this moment. And thank God we're not lawyers. We don't have to litigate the no. So like we can move on. Like we don't have to be like, you're wrong, you know.
Let me hear my 30 no's so I can get to my 31 yes.
Yeah. So I think that's number one. Number two, what I would say is that they have to be willing to look at not alternative funding sources or anything like that, but is there any part of the market that's just untapped? Like they haven't talked to these people, he or she or they have not spoken to these people directly. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times what I see is that particularly like in LGBTQ and trans communities, like it becomes so tight knit that like you have donors who'd be willing to give, but they don't know what a trans person looks like. And you're like, what? And they're like, because they're like, well, no, I've never met anyone. I've never been to the community. And that's why visibility is so critical. Yeah. So like, you know, who are you willing to talk to? Because I am telling you, people who are meeting the LGBTQ, or sometimes I refer to as just the rainbow folks, you know, mm-hmm. I sometimes screw up the acronyms because that's just me. I flub. But when you do that, you know, then all of a sudden people become real instead of a talking point. So like, that's another piece of it. Like, who are we willing to talk to? Is the leader willing to like explore another, you know, market, willing to chat with people? Because people are like, oh, I didn't know that. Of course I would give them that. Yeah, of course, you know, and then you're like, right. Because when you talk about like teenage runaways, like they're like, oh, I don't know why they left their home. It must have been fine there. You're like, what's fine?
Conversation. Let's be willing to talk.
Yes. And then I would say the third thing is that they need to ask for help themselves. So a lot of times the leaders are like trying to do everything in the mission. Like when I gave this situation about, you know, the person on the board, and he was kind of yelling at me about stuff I didn't know, is that they were actually having a real donor conversation. They were getting money. They were not going to pause for this silliness. And I get that. But sometimes they need to ask for help. Like, hey, if you see one of our staff who are getting raked over the coals by one of our board members, could you maybe intervene and get some coffee for them? Or, you know, or just be like, hey, I could actually answer that. And I would answer it this way because I work here. They only work, you know, the shift here to here. They won't know that. Wouldn't that be great? But no, that didn't happen. So, and I think when leaders ask for more help, people do step up in organizations, because a lot of times people are like this, I'm waiting to see what you're going to do.
Right.
And it's like, get a job, man. Go get a job if you're waiting on, you know, or, you know, go work outside if you're like, I need to be outside with the sun. Okay, go outside.
Go outside with the sun. Yeah. I get it. So I'm going to go through these comments and see what we got going on here. Okay. And give you an opportunity to answer some of those questions. So I have a lot of confirmations. So people are saying currently fear is holding me back from moving in my business launch. So I want to give you a little bit more time to address that, because fear is a huge factor. I think I was reading some type of survey, and people were I know that public speaking is death, but asking for money and stuff like that is right up there with it. So it's a big fear. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to address that a little bit more as I scroll down to these questions, because I got one big one here.
Oh, okay. Okay. So what I will say is every time I have a fear, I don't know if I can do this, I have to remind myself of a very simple little mantra that I use. Love is stronger. It's why you start. It's why you pick up, even if you fail. Love is stronger. love is asking for help. If you really like I really need like a sales system, or, I need a script because I'm so nervous. I can't get through this. Great. The script is good because then you can go practice in front of the mirror, in front of your phone, or record it. You can send it to somebody if you record it and say, what do you think?
Right.
And then they can give you feedback. So you're not alone, right? But what we do is when we're scared about asking for money or fundraising is that we just do this. We go inside and go, oh God, oh God. Will this pass? Will this pass? Will this pass? Will the money just please show up? I don't want to do this. But that's not how money works on this planet. We have to hi, how are you?
Right.
What's going on?
Yeah.
This is what I do.
You got to get over that fear, basically. So Elaine's asking, if you're a small nonprofit, not even located where you're trying to do the ask for money, what can you bring to the beginning of the ask to get people's attention? I understand Doctors Without Borders because it's international. And so people know about it to start. But what if they don't know about your organization?
Okay, so this is great. This is story time. This is when you might want to have your top 3 stories about what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. Why are you taking your hard-earned time? And then being very clear, this is the last piece, because this is how you're going to get bigger, how these people can help you. So your ask may not be, if you're not even asking for money, but you're asking for visibility. Make sure you have some social media posts or videos that they can share with links. Make sure that you go and ask, can I get on your podcast? I'm just starting a nonprofit. I need to get some visibility. I have a visibility coach that I hired, or you didn't have to say you hired or whatever. Or I read online, I need 3 steps to visibility, and I have to get on certain podcasts. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I think that as you're saying, sometimes we think the first step is money, and it's not. You've got to build some visibility. You've got to have that story. You got to be out there telling that story because, again, and I want you to help me with this, but people have a choice about where they give their hard-earned dollars.
They absolutely do. And sometimes people can't give money. So for instance, there was a woman I know that she started, she went to Catholic school. They were definitely Catholic. That's all I can say. She had a large family. It was very Catholic. But what she did is she started a furniture donation drive for refugees that were in her community. They didn't go to her school. That was a private school, by the way. And she was not a wealthy woman. She was her husband worked for UPS, and she occasionally taught piano. And she was well educated, but she was like, I'm going to take care of my family. And she's lovely. And then she did stuff, with her husband. But her husband's, salary kind of had to cover the bills, if you know what I mean. But she was like, well, these people don't even have a bed, and they don't have furniture. So what she did is she just started talking to people at school. She just, mentioned it to some of the wealthier women and said, hey, I'm thinking about starting this. And people were like, and all of a sudden, she got a discount on a U-Haul rental, and she took it down and got it to the refugee place. Right. And then people were like, you were so good, you should start your own nonprofit. And she's like, I don't even know how to do that. Somebody showed her. Right. And you know what her mission was? She was just, she just wanted to help. But people got behind her because she wouldn't stop talking about it.
Right. Yeah. Talking about it everywhere you go. Your community is untapped. Rotary clubs,
yes,
Kiwanis clubs, just talk. Go to the chamber meeting. Just talk and show your passion. And what you said, Jeannie, get the story, get it out there. You got to do that. And
then have that clear ask so then people know how to help you. Because a lot of times they hear your story and they're like, I don't know what you want me to do. Do you want money? Because then they think, if I give you money, will you go away? And that's not the story that you want to build.
Oh, that is so key. Because if you do that, what they're going to give you is that go away money. It's not going to be.
I already gave at the office.
Yes, it's not going to be relational giving. It's going to be transactional. They're just going to give it to you to make you go away. Oh, that was gold. I don't know if you heard that, but if you didn't, you got to write that one down because they are writing all these little nuggets down that you were saying here. And so that is, I want to make sure we got all those questions out. And one of the questions that I get, the most common question I get is, Sabrina, can you help me with engaging my board in fundraising? And the answer is yes. So just visit my website at buildingbetterboards.com to check out my services. And Yay! If you're watching this on rebroadcast, post your questions in the comments and we'll get back with you. Someone
Yeah.
asked if this is being recorded. It definitely is being
Yay.
recorded. You can actually see it on YouTube, LinkedIn, and in Facebook. And it'll go out in my newsletter that goes out on this Friday. So you will see this. You have dropped so much information and I thank you so much for that. How can people get in contact with you?
So people can get in contact with me with under my website, globalmoneycoach.com. And I'm also running it's going to happen in February, but I'm doing an event just for women who are starting a business because, there's a lot of things that we as women, we forget that we need to know when it comes to our money. And that's the whole point of it, is to be like, if you want to get paid more to do what you want to do, or you're like, I need that, and then I want to start my nonprofit, because you can do both if you choose to, then absolutely still come, because you'll still get some wonderful money ideas. And,
Yeah, and I'm going to say this, because people always think I've started a nonprofit and they don't equate that to starting a business. That is wrong. 501c3 is just a tax designation. What you have started is a business.
Yes.
So you need to show up so that you don't make those mistakes in your business. So with that, are there any final words for you, Miss Jeannie?
If you want to beat the worry and the fear that's going to be all over the internet and all over the news, is start talking to people about your passion and have a clear ask. Even if the ask is, can you come and join me? Could you come and help me for an hour? That is a clear ask. And sometimes people are like, absolutely. That's what's going to penetrate and going to keep your nonprofits alive, your mission-based organizations alive.
And that's Sipping Tea with Sabrina. See you next time. Bye-bye.